All right. I'm buckled in.
Okay. The little lady has told us we are in progress. I'm going to kill the music and stop my screen share. I'm going to spotlight myself and Mr. Dominic. Where are you? There you are. Welcome, everyone. I'm Joel. Welcome to this week's weekly briefing brought to you by RevThink. So on behalf of my team, I want to say welcome. This is that time of the week we get together and catch up on the latest news, things you need to know about, maybe a new trend, some hot button issue going on in our industry. And with us today is my friend and now especially special co-conspirator, Dominic DeMaria. Dominic, say hello.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Good to see some familiar faces too.
Always good to have you on the live stream with us. I can always count on you to bring like that lively energy and clarity. Plus you have such a great voice. Like I wish my podcast, I wish I had a voice like yours.
Oh man, you're too kind.
Well, you got this big, strong like voice. Anyways, all that to say, what are we talking about here today, Dominic? Because you and I both know that positioning is a royal pain point for most creative business owners. And you and I said, you know what, we're obviously taking a group of owners through this process in Jumpstart over the next 8 weeks. But I thought it would be really good to give the larger community a peek inside not only what we're doing, but why. And why is this such a struggle? And I can, of course, share some stories from my journey. I thought you could share some stories from your journey and how you're even putting energy and focus into helping people with positioning as well. But that said, tell everyone like, what is the positioning lab, this thing that we're doing inside of Jumpstart?
Yeah, well, the positioning lab is going to be a weekly sort of supplemental tool along with the rest of the Jumpstart program. So we'll be able to get in and hot seat some of the new Jumpstarters and help them in real time work on their positioning through a series of exercises and different things that that we've put together to do that. But the idea is to get your brand behind your own two eyes, to really develop your perspective. And I have another word for positioning. I call it trauma therapy because a lot of the pain points of positioning come down to things like courage, come down to things like, being able to express yourself and not feel the fear of judgment. And positioning is exactly the place to work on those things, because that's, if you can nail something down that resonates with you so deeply that you're excited to talk about it. I mean, they're the same people that struggle with positioning are also the people that'll like blow you up about how cool the new iPhone thing is. And it's like, if you could take that passion and put it in your brand, believe in your brand that much, then how much better off could you be?
Yeah, well said. And I'll tell a quick story for context. Okay, so this is a story that some of you've heard. If you've been through Jumpstart, you know this story, that when I was running my creative studio, Impossible Pictures, I had a meeting with the senior vice president of marketing creative at DirecTV, a guy named Roger Hyde. It took 3 years to get this meeting. And I'm not kidding, like 3 years of attempts and misfire and finally we're at Promax at a conference. We have this meeting, my team, his team. What does he do? He does what every client does. He says, so Joel, tell me about Impossible Pictures. And what do? The next words that come out of my mouth are my positioning statement, meaning who am I, what do I do, et cetera. Tell me about my company. And I totally fumbled like most of us do. I'm like, well, we're this creative studio and we love collaboration and we're very design centric and, blah, 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 all this crap. And he actually interrupts me, Dominic, before I can even finish my horrible, diatribe. He stops me and says, whoa, wait. Can I just be honest with you for a second, man? I've met with about 12 of your competitors here today at the conference. And can I just be honest? All you guys suck at marketing. Why should I trust you to market my brand? oh, damn. He just called me out. And suffice it to say, we had a polite conversation after that. I didn't have an answer for him. We never worked with DirecTV, and that huge opportunity was blown. And I went home with my tail tucked between my legs, determined I'm going to figure this shit out. Like, I am going to figure out this positioning riddle. And that's what propelled me to refresh my brand of my studio. It ushered in an era of great clarity about who we were and what we did. And we did cooler projects and for awesome clients and rebrands for networks, all this stuff. But it had its genesis in that positioning thing. So I tell that story to say, if you suck like I did, there is hope. So I'm curious, Dominic, what's your response when you hear that story?
Well, it brings up actually a similar story for me. This is many years ago on my first ever trip to LA before I relocated there, before we were based there. I had this meeting set up through a friend with a gentleman at a company now that's, I mean, they're still thriving. They've just grown and grown since this time. But same thing, you know, I showed him my reel and he was like, "You're executing well. I don't have like negative notes for you." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." And he goes, "I'm never going to call you." And I said, wow. Like, you know, I was confused, obviously. Why? And he's like, "Honestly, there's 30 people lined up out the door just like you." And he said, "If you really want to be in a position to thrive, if you want to be in a position similar to, you know, the things that we're doing here, you're better off doing something unique for yourself." So I was pissed, obviously. Yes, but probably some of the best advice I've ever gotten.
Well, similarly, right? It's that, you know, as human beings, we learn mostly when we fail. We don't learn much when we succeed. And that failure for me, I remember going home and I started doing this actual inventory. I started looking at all the studios around the world and noticing like their positioning language, like on their About Us pages. And I started inventorying them and looking for the patterns. And what ultimately came out of that project was, after looking at 200 or 300 different studios, I said, well, the ones that seem to be doing it right, meaning they really stand out, they're noteworthy, they're doing great work, they seem to be successful. The common pattern I found was they talk from a place of their why or their who or their how, or some, you know, amalgamation of those things, which ultimately led me to say, I have this theory about what I call the 3 Ps, right? Your purpose, your power, and your personality is where you're going to really find that great language to define who you are. But that said, I thought it was so interesting when you and I were preparing for this talk today. You talked about, what did you call it? What kind of therapy? Trauma therapy?
Trauma therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, because you said, well, Joel, it kind of makes sense that it's so challenging because on the one hand, there's this imposter syndrome, right? Where if you're an owner, you look at all of the amazing companies out there and you say, well, I'm not all that great, right? There's people greater than me. I should stay humble and play small and just, you know, let the work speak for itself. But then on the other hand, there's a part of you that says, on the other end of the spectrum, man, I don't have to prove anything to anyone. My work is awesome. And therefore, people should just look at my work and say, you're obviously great and talented, you're hired. And then those are like two opposing forces, right?
They're either opposing forces or your best friends to help you find the North Star in the middle.
And what, so we're like, when you start diving into this process with people, I'm just thinking about some practical thoughts. Where do you tend to start? Questions?
We start usually, well, so here's the interesting thing, you know, a great piece of advice I got many years ago was never describe yourself through what you aren't. And yet what you aren't is a really powerful place to start for uncovering and discovering like who you are. And I think, you know, we got to be careful of buzzwords because there's a lot of people out here that are talking about making yourself indispensable or something like that. And it's like, if you reframe this thought and think about you as the unique, special, beautiful perspective that you are indispensable. But you've made yourself dispensable by thinking we need to censor ourselves for this audience. We need to be something we're not so that we'll be accepted by, Netflix or something. And it's like, no, like the more clear and the more honest to your own voice as you can possibly be, that's the reframe. That's the starting point.
Yeah. I'm thinking you reminded me of another technique that is it's in this worksheet, right, that we go through in the accelerator. So you're about to get exposed to this, Dominic, and I'll be curious to see what people's response to this step is. I ask people, what makes you angry? Meaning what really gets you fired up? And it gets you out of this headspace called, well, I have to be polite. I have to speak in a way that's nice and appropriate. Okay, these are all self-censoring words, to borrow your term. Right. And when you start thinking about what gets you really fired up, like one question I ask people is, imagine the most killer project, the one that you've been salivating for years, comes your way. It's from this great client. But then at the last minute, she says, oh, actually, unfortunately, I have to award this to your competitor. And that competitor is a terrible fit for that project. For you, it's a dream project. You would just absolutely kill it. They're going to blow it. Now, do you feel that sense of like indignant, self-righteous, like that's not right? There's this injustice that rolls up in you. That's the kind of energy I want people to tap into is, okay, tell me more. Why do you feel that way? What is it that you're bringing? What is unique about you versus them and all that goes into that? Because now we're not talking in language that's nice, polite, appropriate. We're putting phrases and words out there that might be great on the top of a website that frankly could be offensive to some people or outlandish to others, but to the right audience that you're actually reaching out to, they're going to say, wow, that resonates with me. These people seem awesome.
Yeah, you don't need everybody to like you. I mean, the fact is you need like a half dozen people to like you. So as long as whatever you're saying is the right fit for them, I mean, you don't really need to tailor it. Those people will find you if you can dial it in properly. And I think, your positioning should be an operating system for your best work, but your best work is not just deliverables. Your best work is your philosophy. Your best work is the perspective.
Yeah, there's a point of view, right, that comes across. And in a way, the positioning is almost that, I think of it like a tip of the spear, right? It's the first thing that introduces somebody to who you are and what you're about. And then when you show them the work is the what that proves your why. So when Dominic says, hey, I'm soul matter, start a fire, I'm all about start a fire, I'm kind of like, wow, okay. That's a pretty interesting why. That's a cool mission. Show me more. And when you show me your work, it had better back up what you just said. And if it does, it creates this really cool congruity where I say, wow, I think this dude is for real. Like what he's saying and what I'm seeing and hearing in terms of his portfolio, it's all like it all jives.
100%. It's got to be harmonious. Those two things are two sides of the same coin.
So when people go into this, when we take people through this lab, do you envision this to be like, okay, first victim in the hot seat, show me what you got. And there's like going to be an honest tear down, but then okay, now let's build it back up, but also give you some spice and some flavor. And like, let's go crazy a bit here and see what sticks.
Well, yeah, the first thing I'll say is I see so much incredible potential from the group that's about to come through. There's some really interesting brand concepts, really diverse group of people. Like I love what we're going to be working with. Mm-hmm. We have a series of 8 disciplines that we work through in order to iterate through the positioning language. And the thing about positioning is so much of it is about language. So much of it is about how you talk, your cadence, your choice of vocabulary, and of course how that translates to things like your website. And I think it's I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity to look at hypotheticals, right? So if we were the brand to do X, if our vision for the world wins, what would it look like? And that's a great place to start, because that's what your brand should be.
Well, the thing I love about that too is there's a universality of this idea of when you connect with your right audience, it's not a matter of, oh, now I just need to convince them to pick me. And this is where I see most positioning falls flat. And I got to give credit to Dallas Taylor. If you're here, Dallas, love you, man. When I did this podcast with Dallas, he was talking about this entire season, like years and years of him running his studio, when he realized all I'm doing all the time is trying to convince clients to pick me. And it's exhausting. And then when you look at the language that's on a website and the way they position, those kinds of companies, they will tend to have a lot of the word we. Like, we are a studio that does this, and we believe these things, and we love this, and we, all right? And I won't go into much detail, but just suffice it to say that there's a whole different way to speak to the world, where if you look at someone like Apple, now I know they're not a creative studio, but hang with me for a second. But somebody like Apple speaks from this deep why, this sense of purpose called, hey, we're here to disrupt the status quo and make, life simple. They're not saying, oh, we're better, we're cooler, we're faster, we're smarter, we're cheaper, we're younger, therefore pick us. They're just saying, we believe these certain things about the world, our work, our portfolio, our products, services back that up. If you're one of us, then let's party. Then let's hang out, like subscribe to our thing, join our whatever, be part of this, like a movement almost. And I think really creative, smart creative companies can do the same thing. You get that point of view out there, because I'm looking like at your shop and I'm saying, okay, Soul Matter, start a fire. If I'm on board with your whole vibe, your point of view, that belief system, then it's not a question of whether or not I'm going to pick you. It's more like, I found my people. We should work together.
Yeah, it's very tribal, and I think that's the idea. And I mean, Apple is a classic example in so many ways, but now there's even like neuroscience around why that works. And there's this interesting. I'll find you the link to this video, but there's this case study between Samsung fans and Apple fans, right? And how they speak about the brands. And Apple fans have these in their brain incredible emotional responses to new iPhones, new whatever, new Apple stuff. Samsung people have no response whatsoever to new Samsung stuff, but they have negative response to Apple stuff.
That's funny.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah. And this is something that's being measured, right?
Yeah. MRI brain scans.
So it makes you wonder if someone was going to take like if you're a studio or production company and run your brand through that same, right? Through that same filter, through that same analysis, are people going to come out and be like, well, like what would the emotional response be? And I'll say this too. Here's another big area of, I don't know if this is neuroscience, but I just know one thing I've learned over the past, say, decade or so is this concept that humans are actually not rational beings. We are emotional beings who use reason to back up or justify our emotional decisions. And this gets into marketing, it gets into sales, all kinds of stuff, of course, that is near and dear to my heart. But when you really think about that, you realize, oh, so someone is excited about working with me and my company for emotional reasons? And I would say yes, 100%. What would you say?
Right. Well, I have a question for you. When did you decide to use Apple as an example?
It was right after I watched the famous Simon Sinek TED Talk, Start With Why, and he did his book. And when he first laid out his golden circle, which again, I think is not quite ideal for creative companies like the world we live in, but when he laid out his golden circle and he talked about this idea of people buy why you do it, not people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And he also said, your purpose is not to do business with people who want what you have, but why, why you do it and so forth. It just blew my mind. I thought, what? This is what I've been searching for. So it was just a big piece on my journey when I was going through this refresh of Impossible Pictures, changing our name to just Impossible. We changed our URL. We went from we do all this cool stuff to like we do just this narrow branding and design thing. We call it Imagine the Impossibilities and so forth. But that was the time when I got exposed to that Apple example.
You guys with the Impossible case study, that's a classic example. It's a legendary brand. I think the reason I was leaning into that is because I think, so much of positioning is getting to a place where there's this Zen space of shameless self-promotion, right? And even saying like self-promotion makes people throw up in their mouth, but it's like, we don't think twice about shamelessly promoting others that we believe in. And there's something very beautiful about having a beginner's mind about your own approach to your own brand and thinking about what is the most magical version of this? What is the version that I would be excited about talking about at any time of the day, out of bed in the morning, on a podcast, at the fucking cafe, wherever.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right. Once you get that language right, it will roll off the tongue, hopefully, as comfortably as anything else I might ask someone. So if I said, Dominic, where were you born? Where did you go to high school? Right? Like, what was your, where did your family come from? You would just tell it like it's true. It's just a story. It's a story about something real. And when I said, oh, and what's your company
Because
about?
it is true.
Yeah. And when I said, and tell me about your company and what's your company about? What do? You would just be like, boom. It's Soul Matter. We say start a fire and we mean this. And it wouldn't be a sales pitch. It's not a cheesy, like made up thing. It's just real. It's just honest. And guess what? It makes me really curious because I'm always going to hear that and go, wait, tell me more, especially if I'm like your tribe, if I'm a really good prospect that should be working with you. When you tell me that line, I'm going to be like, hooked.
Well, yeah, and you've already brought up, our friend Dallas, and I think it's always his podcast is the quintessential example of not waiting for, not being in this pick me place, not waiting for opportunity, but really just putting your perspective out into the world. And I think one of the mistakes that we make with positioning is thinking that it's a one and done exercise, that we do jumpstart and we do our positioning and then we've moved on with life. But it's an iterative thing. And just like, how many times have you told the story about, where you're from, your hometown, or how many times have you told the story about the DirecTV meeting? You've practiced all this, right? And each of these things are seeds for, maybe you could call them campaigns, but just expressions of all the things that your brand is, all the things that you're positioning, that your perspective is.
Yeah, it is. Because people always wonder, right? Like, okay, we've gone through this exercise. Here's the language I came up with. We're really excited about it, but are we done? And my encouragement is no, it's never done. It's just better. And it just keeps getting better because you're going to evolve and grow and change. So is your business. So you're going to always be refining it and so forth. So you have to give yourself permission to not seek perfection, but not let that perfect be the enemy of good. Because anything that clarifies you is going to help you move forward and help you get out there and start telling your story and connect with new people in new ways.
Yeah. And the nuance to that is that, in my life, the best mentors I've ever had don't use the M word. We don't talk about them as if they're mentors. They mentor me. So we lead through demonstration. We demonstrate expertise instead of claiming it. And the demonstration piece, like that is your positioning. That's what people see.
Yeah. Yep. I'm digging on what Ryan had here to share, Mr. Summers, about Ryan Polly. So the weekend video guys, when they went through this process, they used to be called Maker Table. And so when they went through this positioning exercise inside Jumpstart, they were like really struggling, right? And they kind of said, I think we need to even change our name, which of course was a tall order. And when they came back and said, yeah, we're going to change our name to Weekend Video. And if you go to their website and check it out, you'll see everything that's there. But here's the point that Ryan makes. It's really, I'm digging what Ryan does too with his podcast. You know so quickly what it will be like to work with him after listening on a single episode. And so there it is, right? Dominic, that totally backs up this idea we were saying, that like when you get it right, you get introduced to this. Again, it's probably like this. You hear this interesting podcast, you hear this really interesting cat talking about this certain point of view. And then when you find out that he's a principal at a production company called Weekend Video that has this really fun, goofy point of view, it all makes sense. Like it's totally congruent. And I'm like, well, I want to hang out with that guy. He's funny. And I think my brand needs humor. So like, I'm in. Count me. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, and mad props to Ryan and those guys over there too, because we went through Revolve together. And that's where a lot of, we were talking about, we were repositioning and working on this all at the same time. And I'm stoked on what they're doing. Their whole, the vintage vibe, the cassettes, the whole thing. It's just excellent. Yeah. So yeah, I would definitely big ups to them. I would check that out.
So yeah, thank you. A couple of folks dropped some URLs here, so you can check out Weekend Video. And of course, there's a link to the Writer's Room game show. So big idea there, right? Is that one of your expressions of your positioning can be a platform. So in this case, Ryan and Grant, also in this process, when I said, well, how are we going to get this positioning out to the world? And they went through this process and said, what's something that would play to our strength that could be a really killer expression of this positioning? And the solution they came up with was this podcast. But it wasn't just, let's just talk. It was like, let's make it like a game show. And I'll just dangle that there and let people here go check it out. But I just want everyone to notice, this is something they love doing. It's fun for them. It's easy for them. It's a brilliant expression of their point of view, which may lead some people back to this brand called Weekend Video. And those people might be future clients or future collaborators, whatever. It's a beautiful ecosystem that they're building.
Yeah, it's really brilliant.
Well, Ryan just chimed in. Polly's partner, Seth, tells a storytelling product that has opened doors in ways just making a new reel or a rebrand would never do. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Ryan. Well, Dominic, we should wrap it up here. We're at the 30-minute mark. So you're going to hang out in Milan for another week or so, and then you come back stateside when we get into this positioning lab?
Yeah, I'm here for a couple of weeks. I'll be back on the 5th or 6th of October. So I'll be, I should be nice and caught up. Shouldn't have any problems.
Well, good. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you instigate inside this group of owners. And I think everyone here will be watching to see, a month or two from now, what changes, right? Some of these people are going to come out of the gate with some really cool new message, new mission, new clarity, all this about their positioning that I think will help propel their businesses to that next season. So thanks for helping lead this.
No, thanks for the opportunity. This is I'm really thrilled, and yeah, I'm really excited to see. There's some good questions that I think we'll uncover some interesting stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, well, everyone, thanks for coming to this week's briefing. Hope you got a gem or a nugget or something beneficial. Dominic, thanks for chiming in all the way from Milan. It's time for you to go to bed or go get a nightcap.
There we go.
All right, thanks everyone. We will see you next week.
Thank you all for being here too.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks everyone. We'll see you next week for another briefing. Until then, if you're not a member of RevCommunity, we invite you to join there, where a couple hundred of your peers are hanging out on a regular basis. And together we're going to make our industry stronger and help all of you keep moving forward. So on behalf of my colleague, Tim, and the rest of my team, thanks everyone for being here. Dominic, enjoy Milan. See you next week, everyone.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks, everyone.